Okay, here is the second part of the lecture for Bridgemont Community Technical College on education. So we'll pick up here. This is like, I think, the bottom of the fourth page of your PowerPoint. You can kind of see, it's kind of tough to see here maybe. The colors on this will help you a little bit. But who goes to school? A lot of people want to compare our educational systems with those of China or Japan. And certainly statistics do indicate that we rank close to the bottom compared to other industrialized nations in terms of test scores and academic achievement. Now we could debate the merits of that and pick that apart, but we're not going to do that at this point. But I do want to kind of show you this. So who goes to school? Let's look at it. In grade school, in the United States, which is on the right-hand column, 100%, everybody goes. In China, 97%, pretty close. Now, what happens in China is that they start selecting the most intelligent, or the ones who are doing, very well, the best in school, and they are allowed to continue with education and schooling within education. In the United States, again, it's just about everybody, regardless of ability or achievement. 99% in the U.S. In high school, only 12% in China are attending high school. So you've got the very best of the best in high schools. In the United States, you've got 90% of people who are age appropriate in high school. So again, the opportunity for education is extended to everyone in the U.S. in high school. College, only 1% of the population in China attends college. So you have to be amongst the elite to attend college in China. In the United States, 40% will attend college. That's not even saying graduate. That's attend. So we're comparing basically everybody in our population to the best of the best in China. So it's going to stand to reason that China's scores will probably be higher. What about what states spend on students every year? In spite of the fact that we are kind of at the bottom of the list in terms of academic achievement in West Virginia in a lot of ways, unfortunately, and also in spite of the fact that we have some of the highest high school dropout rates, we spend pretty much average, like on the higher end of average in terms of students per year. I think in West Virginia, I've looked at some statistics, and you can look if you want as well. But we're spending close to $9,000 or $10,000 a year on every student in school. So that's pretty significant. The low spenders you can see in the blue, like Arizona, Texas, Florida. The top spenders spend between roughly $10,500 and almost $15,000 a year on their students. And again, you're going to see the northeastern part of the country there. So maybe that reflects something that we could discuss. We could look at it in terms of race and or ethnicity. How many people complete high school? 81% of Caucasians, 66% of African Americans, and only 57% of Latinos complete high school. Some would look at those statistics and make some will come to some very erroneous conclusions. Some would assume that African Americans and Latinos just aren't quite as bright as Caucasians. Well, there are some inherent problems with those kinds of assumptions. The way the school system is set up, the way standardized testing is put together, often favors the majority population, which would be Caucasians. The way that test questions are worded often favor experiences that are common more to Caucasians than to ethnic minorities. And we could talk about that, at a later time as well. Of those who complete high school, how many actually go to college? So you see you've got 49% of Caucasians, 37% of African Americans, only 30% of Latinos. So we could try to start thinking about why opportunities are still so limited for college entrance for minorities. And so again, some people would say it's because they're just not bright enough, which is unfortunate. And others realize that we have more systemic, maybe societal problems that keep ethnic minorities from succeeding or even entering colleges, even now, even in 2014. So you've got verbal and math scores. We can kind of see in the 60s and the 70s, verbal and math scores were a lot higher on standardized tests. They took a nosedive, both of them, in the 1980s, even into the 90s. Now we've got more of an emphasis on increasing these test scores, and we're seeing that the scores are starting to rise, but they're not nearly as high as they were in the 60s and the 70s. As far as what we pay people, we have a system of social stratification within our country. We tend to assign higher and lower levels of status to certain types of jobs or certain categories of occupations. Engineering, you can see I've got a few here. Engineering, petroleum, on average they're making almost $60,000 a year. I'm going to skip around a little bit. Computer science, about $53,000 a year. If you get into teaching and the social sciences, on average teachers are making $35,284 a year. And you have this on your PowerPoint packet that I've sent you. And in the social sciences like psychology, sociology, social work, etc., $33,881 per year on average. And those are all just averages. Now, low-income countries have very little schooling available, and high-income countries have much schooling available. We kind of take for granted in our country the idea of public education, the idea of schooling. In fact, most students a lot of times will skip school. There are days that you don't want to go. There are probably times you don't want to come to my class. I understand. I was a student once as well. So we tend to take it for granted. Here's something that might surprise you. Again, different parts of the world don't emphasize education and schooling the way that we do. Approximately 1/3 of the world's population cannot read or write. 33% of the world's population cannot read or write. That's astounding to me. And that probably will surprise some of you. That emphasizes and reflects the lack of emphasis placed on education in some parts of the world. Schooling in India, we'll look at a couple of different places. India has outlawed child labor, but many children, especially girls, continue to work in factories up to 60 hours per week, greatly limiting chances for schooling. If you're working, I know a lot of you work and go to school. I did that as well. But if you're a young child and you're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, probably in an agriculturally based economy in the area where you're living, and trying to go to school, it's going to be tough, even if you're very bright and motivated. 81% of children complete primary school, often in overcrowded classrooms. Less than half attend secondary schools. Very few people in India enter college. Almost 40% of people in India cannot read or write. Patriarchy shapes Indian education. Girls cost more. Parents have to pay a huge dowry to their daughters' husbands' families when the woman gets married. So there exists lower motivation and less money to send girls to school compared to men. So, how about schooling in Japan? There was no mandatory education in Japan until 1872. Japan is widely praised, and rightly so, for producing some of the world's highest achievers. In early grades, Japanese education focuses on Japanese traditions, so really cultural kinds of things. In the early teens, the focus is shifted to highly competitive examinations, and scores on these tests determine your entire future in Japan. So you don't just get a do-over. You don't get to mess up in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grades and then turn it around in high school and do well in college like you can in the U.S. It's you've got literally a very limited window of opportunity to succeed in Japan, to go on and to pursue higher education. 96% high school graduation rate, the highest of anywhere in the world. But what you have to remember is that in places like China and in places like Japan, they don't allow everyone to go to high school. Only the smartest of the smart, or the brightest of the bright, if you will, even get to attend high school. So it stands to reason that they probably are going to graduate most of those people. Whereas compared to the United States, we let everybody go to high school, regardless of ability. And a lot of those people, or rather I should say, some of those people, in some cases a lot, don't graduate. So, schooling in the United States. The U.S., we were the first country to set the goal of mass education. By 1918, we had passed in the United States a mandatory education law requiring all children to attend school until the age of 16 or the completion of 8th grade. So we're starting to place a strong emphasis on public education and free education at that for everyone in this country. As of 2006, more than 4/5 or 80% of people had high school educations. In 2006, more than 1/4 or 25% of all people had a 4-year college degree. That's remarkable. No other country can boast that. If you fast forward to today, that number's closer to 30%. Almost 30% of age-appropriate people have acquired a 4-year bachelor's degree. So as you can see, we just said that. No other country in the world can say that. So that speaks to our emphasis and our value upon education in this country. Our educational system is shaped in the United States by, first of all, our high standard of living. Young people typically don't have to work. You think back to our discussion of India that we just had. Young children, even though there are child labor laws, they're still often working in fields 50, 60 hours a week. In our society, young children don't have to work. It's not necessary. We live in an information-based society where you don't need 6 or 7 kids in a family to work on a farm to make things work, to have food, to be able to survive. We have a higher division of labor. We have a more technologically advanced society that frees children up to not have to work. Also, our educational system is shaped by our democratic principles. The idea that education should be available to everybody, not just men, not just the elite, not just white people, but to everybody. And we're going to call that the end of this part B, for the lecture on education. Thank you.